So basically, there are three things that have been going simultaneously. One is that but the under the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction. Other is the climate change adaptation. That is the regime that has evolved over past 15 years or so in addressing climatic extremes, and also the ability to cope up with what is going wrong and what are the newer challenges. But the on the top of everything, basically that how we ensure the long-term survival and long-term stability, long-term resource efficiency, and that broad gamut we call it sustainability. So basically, my thought process here is that uh, eh, instead of going in silos, how do we look in in integrated manner, and how we do look at the co-benefits of each other in terms of the I would say that an integrated approach. And on the other hand, why do we need to also enable an interface between the science and technological interventions with policy, so that there is a better connect and better translation of the recent technologies, recent innovations, and also to enable it to wait feedback mechanisms from the ground. So we all know, and we have witnessed also that while the number of deaths in disasters in general, except the black swan events like COVID, here have reduced because of the improved preparedness, improved response mechanisms. But on the other hand, damage and losses in terms of infrastructure, economic damage to ecosystems have increased and become widespread. Besides that, we have also experienced that the newer disaster trends are also emerging. For example, the Australia's the bushfire has emerged as a devastating and a newer kind of a scenario. So in India also, the forest fire has become a disastrous scenario. And beside that, over past 7 8 years, the heat waves have emerged as a kind of a new kind of disasters. Then in Asia Pacific region, dust storm has also emerged. And besides that, the industrial accidents, while some would not agree to some connections of climatic extremes of climatic issues with industrial accidents, but when we talk about fire, when we talk about the challenges about water, I think there would be some level of agreement that the changes in the threshold level of the heat exposure can contribute to the increasing fire risk as well within the industry, within urban systems as well. The globally as well as in India. In fact, in India, from the Hyogo framework period itself, the focus emerged on sectoral dimensions of mainstreaming the climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction, and that has paid well. We are quite ahead in many aspects because we started looking at how the key sectors of development should imbibe the principles of disaster risk management and climate change adaptation. India's Prime Minister gave his vision in form of a 10-point agenda for disaster risk management in the year 2016. That was a seventh ASEAN Ministerial Conference that was hosted in New Delhi. And the first point was all the sectors of development to imbibe the principles of disaster risk management along with climate change adaptation and sustainability. Another aspect that we consider is very, very important, that the globally we are undergoing a disruptive transformation. Our disruptive transformation is not only in the form of the technological changes. Yes, technological changes, the disruptive technology is transforming everything. They focus on robotics, more automation, drone technologies, nanotechnology. That is already that has already changed our working strategies, working styles, and is going to soon transform a lot. How do we manage our cities? How do we manage our industry? How do we manage our agricultural systems? All are going under transformation. But equally important is the disruptive changes in our social systems also. So we are more connected through the electronic systems and these automated systems rather than in person. So basically, how do we look at the emergency response? How do we look at the crisis management scenarios when people are connected through more by the technology and the electronic gadgets rather than in person? So a new kind of a society. So basically, that is also an important concern. When we talk about the climate crisis and climate concerns, and we say that climate change is leading to aggravating the disasters frequency and intensity. But equally important, we consider are that the non-climatic actors. So many times we make only climate change as the prime culprit, while to some extent that may be agreed upon. But converting a climatic extreme events or a climatic shock in terms of being realized as a disaster being a damage and loss events basically requires a number of anthropogenic and the governance related social related dimensions. So basically there are global process, there are local process, these combine along with anthropogenic attributes and then result in a number of different type of disasters on the ground. When we talk about localizing, I think there are certain big questions, there are certain small questions, but in large numbers. So this one scenario, we have this kind of scenarios also like large congregations on the river banks. Uh, like we have this kind of scenarios that we witnessed during COVID, a large number of migrant workers uh, who were in cities going back even on foot, on bicycle, on rickshaw, on small vehicles to the distances even 500 kilometers, 700 kilometers. So I think there are literal dimensions of the local context that we see. Another context that we witnessed during COVID, that when the lockdown period was about to be over and when the industries were allowed to restart. During the restart of the industry, some mishaps took place and some people lost their lives. So basically, there are also the issues that another disaster are secondary or tertiary disasters within the same disaster. For example, during COVID, we had the challenge of heat wave, devastating and scorching heat wave. We had the drought scenarios. We had four cyclones. Two of them were the super cyclones in the period of COVID-19 and the lockdown period. So basically, we also now have to put in context of localizing these kind of scenarios that we are undergoing one kind of disaster and other disaster suddenly strikes, so a multi-hazard scenario. So that is also important. Uh, I would put another dimension also here when we talk about localizing. Uh, there are there are varying trends and scenarios of various kind of disasters. We did it is a recent study. We did a systemic study of the disaster incident mapping across India. India is a diverse country, so a large number of states, so 39 states and union territories. So 25 years period, we divided in three periods and we considered four major climatic disasters and three biological disasters. So as to capture the 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 disease outbreak as well related with. So basically, these kind of a study where we studied that what has been the frequency and mortality, what has been the impact of various policy regime. So one policy regime was the pre-Hyogo period. So that was a Yokohama strategy. Then it was a Hyogo period, and currently we are in the Sendai period. So how at the local level this trend has shifted and how we are projecting the trends. Basically, that will be an important concern in thinking about the localizing disaster resilience agenda. So not necessarily that what we talk about in general about the Asia Pacific or what we talk in general about the nation as a whole applies to a particular district or a sub-district level. So that is also very important. Another study that we did that despite of the a very good early warning system, cyclone tracking, we found that there were some casualties. So despite of the early warning, evacuation, preparedness, and best of the response systems, why there has been some kind of a failure that the mishap occurred. So we did a systemic study also to understand what are the local factors that make our efforts fail. So whether it was at the level of reception or at the level of communication, at the level of understanding, at the level of capacity. So basically that was also a kind of a study. This is two pictures. One showing that India and Bangladesh by 2050, this is a projection that almost 28% of the population are going to live in very high risk scenarios, more particularly about floods. And on the other hand, other side, we see a picture of just one forecast uh, about their rainfall. And we see that at the same time, a large part of the country is projected and has actually experienced a excess rainfall, an excess rainfall, even the 100% excess rainfall or even 220% excess rainfall. But on the other hand, the same period, we can see the deficit even up to 93%. So we have a complex scenario to manage. So basically, when we in India we talk about managing climatic risk or climatic extreme, that is not always so simple to understand and so simple to do. And that is the reason the regional and local context are very important. And therefore, we are focusing on enabling local capacities to understand, plan, and address climatic disaster risks. These kind of studies also bring some local context. For example, how do we manage our land uses? For the some studies about the common flood affected cities, although now many of the cities and towns are facing the seasonal urban floods and waterlogging, but some cities are very well known for that. Chennai flood, we all recall. There are other cities also that, for example, Bengaluru also gets urban flood. And we find that the losses of wetlands, losses of the water bodies, and the land use conflicts have led to increasing flood risk areas. So basically, these kind of studies bring a number of additional context. So, for example, this land use and wetlands. So, summing up, although there may be many other factors, summing up with some of the context that I try to bring here, the environmental changes are emerging as a major risk driver for climatic disasters. And I put climate change as one of the environmental change. There are two other environmental changes. One is the land use, and the third one is the natural resource degradation. So basically, it is not only the climatic actors, but the non-climatic actors also play significantly. When we talk about the non-climatic actors, that has other phase as well, and that is basically the phase that contributes newer layers or intensifies the layers of vulnerability. So any kind of incident being realized as a disaster requires the vulnerable systems. So vulnerabilities that can be governed by the challenges in the environmental systems, landscape, land uses. How do we deal it? How do we manage that? The technological systems, I would say that the approaches in redundancy, approaches in reliability, and also the behavioral factors. And it's very important, basically a paradigm shift from Hyogo framework of action, because in HFA, the priority 4 that was on understanding the underlying causes of vulnerability, addressing underlying causes of vulnerability has emerged in Sendai framework as a priority number 1, and we say that understanding disaster risk is the prime requirement. Talking about localization, basically this picture tells that basically what does it really mean. So basically, where we have the number of the knowledge interfaces, we have the global policies, we have basically the cross the country, and I would say that cross sectoral and the cross state and central state relations, these kind of dialogues, discussions, and joint planning process. But how do we translate all these resources, all these capacities to yield some ground results. Basically, that is the arena of localization. That is the intervention of localization. And on the right also, this tries to depict a picture that how do we use everything outside and at international level to bring a desired change at the local level and the local benefits. So uh, different dimensions for enabling the local capacities. So one is that in India, we took that self-reliance, and self-reliance emerged as a major aspect during COVID, because when we had a lot of disconnectivity. And in fact, it was not only the COVID, we are disconnected from each other, maybe within the jurisdictions, within with the other countries. But during the landslide, during devastating mountain floods, also the places get disconnected. So basically, there has to be a minimum level of self-reliance. That is very important. And then integrated planning process. A number of planning processes are there at local level. For example, very recently we introduced at district level. District is uh, the administrative unit combining a number of developmental blocks, a number of each development blocks, and number of the panchayat groups. Panchayat is basically a consortium of villages. These are the administrative system in India. So all the districts are now following integrated planning process. Now we have introduced the planning for the health adaptation and resilience also. Beside that, as per the recent jurisdiction region directive of the Supreme Court of India, all the districts are asked to prepare environmental action plan. As per the Disaster Management Act, all the districts are required to prepare a disaster management plan. So when a number of plans are being prepared at same level, at district level, there are common players, and there are common benefits, and there are common inputs. So basically, there is a need, and then there is a scope, and that is the reason we are promoting integrated planning process. And certainly, the finance is very important, because any plan would not be possible to implement without finances. So basically, we have recently modified the National Disaster Response Fund to National Risk Mitigation Fund, so that the proactive and the risk mitigation capacity building research, that also can be funded. In India, we have promoted a cadre of Apada Mitra and volunteers for the emergencies, including for climate emergencies, and they are being trained. So that kind of volunteerism is also being promoted at local level. The India's new science, technology, and innovation policy, where the climate change and the disasters are a vertical, a very important vertical. And recently, we had a national meeting that what are the climatic science research is needed to address the challenge. We are also coming up with the using that how scientific interventions and scientific data collection that and their inferences can help understand some kind of a auditing, some kind of a auditing. So for some cities, we developed risk and resilience scores. So basically, we created a scoreboard, and we are trying to develop an app also for that. Then loss and damage, that is the focus that has emerged from COP27, and the India's recent national adaptation communication to UNFCCC has brought disaster risk reduction as one of the very important the cross-cutting sector here. And recently we had an initiative to develop a climate knowledge network, and also integrate with the Asia Pacific level network. So the sectoral adaptation plans are also being developed. We are happy that we contributed to preparation of National Health Adaptation Plan very recently for the Ministry of Health, and also National Disaster Management Plan with a number of ministries and departments. I would like to tell that these disaster management plan for the ministries are not actually for that building or for the premises. Yes, that is also there, but primarily it is for that sector that it deals with. So, for example, the disaster management plan for Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change also deals with how to take proactive initiatives and response mechanisms, recovery mechanisms for the Kaziranga area, where the floods are affecting our the rhinos, and other wildlife. So basically, that is also the lesson I wanted to share. COVID-19 lessons, I think, very important that we're trying to integrate into the overall climate crisis and disaster management, uh, the the improvements. Uh, in India, during COVID, it is also a lesson that we should also look at the traditional knowledge that is available, more particularly when we talk about local capacity building, so that we don't have to look for everything outside, but local resources, local capacities, local knowledge can also be used, and that can strengthen our local planning and initiative. So that is also important. Beside that, we are also in talks with the business sector, corporate sectors, that the business continuity management and business sustainability system should also integrate climate risk and disaster risk. And some of the business systems, corporates have came forward and they are trying to integrate. Uh, One more aspect in localizing, basically the interlinkages of various systems, various infrastructure systems. For example, if there is a failure in the electricity system, there will be a cascading impact on the water supply system or water treatment plants or the health facilities. So basically, transport. So basically, these things are also important, and we are looking at this. The coalition of disaster resilient infrastructure promoted by an idea in India, that is a global forum. Basically, we consider that the integration of resilience across systems is as one of the important dimensions. We recently we are just going to conclude one major the innovative program, that is climate adaptive planning for resilience and sustainability, that CAPRES. That was a 4.5 years program supported by the Department of Science and Technology, Government of India. There we developed different modules for climate adaptive planning across sectors, for agriculture, for health, uh, with a number of other sectors as well. Then we all know G20 presidency in India, the newer focus has come. First time a working group on disaster risk management has been established, and the following the subsequent presidency of Brazil and then Indonesia are also very happy to take the agenda forward. And uh, we feel happy and satisfied that the issues related with addressing climate extremes would be taken care jointly by the countries, not only within G20 but the globally. Then the HERCAP was basically the health resilience and capacity building. The part of the national program on climate change and human health. And then the resilience and sustainability summit that we hosted along with the number of international partners in the month of January 2022 in New Delhi, basically looks at the Vision 2050. In India, basically, we have the focus for envisioning our sectoral planning and the priorities for 2047, the India's 100 years of India's independence, and that incidentally has a direct sync with the scenario of 2050. So we are also looking at the scenario 2080 and 2100 as well, while there are a lot of uncertainties when we talk about 2100. So India's call, the global mission lifestyle for environment. So basically a number of countries have joined, and we are very happy that a lateral intervention we have done. We are developing a analytical policy research based a manual that how the interventions under life mission lifestyle for environment would contribute towards climate resilience and adaptation. So these kind of interventions are also there. Now taking the localization issue at international forum and transboundary interventions. This is a meeting about the Kosi Basin program, the transboundary areas between India and Nepal, where the China, the Bangladesh, and Bhutan, they were Nepal were also partners. So how do we look at the local challenges, local knowledge, and local solutions, basically, and also the ecosystem-based interventions as one of the local, the very important local solutions. The various tools also we are looking. In India, we are developing a new integration to the process of environmental impact assessment protocols, so that in not a parallel or the new tool, but an integration to IA process for major projects that brings the significant landscape changes and can alter hydrological regime, atmospheric regime, the disaster impact assessment. So basically, they're looking at that they in an anticipatory way that any major project, for example, a new highway, a major highway, or a major airport, whether it is going to alter disaster risk scenario in the nearby areas, and if we know that scenario, the proactive interventions can also be taken care. Then planning related aspects. This was a joint initiative with CDKN, Climate Development Knowledge Network, and Government of Uttar Pradesh. That is a northern state in India, and we steered this project with district Gorakhpur. That is a chronically flood-prone area. That how do we look at the departmental planning? How do we revisit the departmental planning? Looking at the past climatic extreme records and also the futuristic scenarios. So downscale climatic information, and then revisiting the procedures, revisiting the codes, revisiting the benchmarks for various interventions under various departments. So, and then that led to an improved version of disaster management plan at the district level. So the identified key departments, and then which are important from the flood resilience point of view, and then working with those departments through a shared learning dialogue. So the new methodology that we had, ISET USA was also a partner with us. So shared learning dialogue was a kind of methodology. Here also, basically, they're looking from the municipal level to down scaling to the corporate level, corporator level. So that is a ward level, and then basically coming to the neighborhood level. So this kind of a localizing agenda has also been there, and to share that in India, in some places, there are initiatives like neighborhood disaster management plan looking at the climatic emergencies. So this is the concept that we evolved through our pilot activities, are the action research projects. The shared learning is the kind of the central focus, and two will represent one, the first level, that understanding the factors of vulnerability, and on the other hand is the building resilience. So basically we worked on the systems, the systems, institutions, and agents, and there our role was of a kind of a catalytic agent. So basically we did not go as an expert, but we enabled local knowledge and blended with the scientific knowledge and enabled the capacity so that people learn to prepare their own resiliency plans. So basically, it was a kind of a top-down, the integration of top-down and the bottom-up approach, and that is basically we are focusing that the national ideas, national thought process should go down, but at the same time there should be a very strong feedback mechanism from the local level, and then it feeds to the national policy process. Uh, Another dimension, our research in the Bundelkhand, that is a chronically drought-prone area, historically drought-prone area, and the 13 districts comprising two states, the Madhya Pradesh, the central province, and the northern province, that Uttar Pradesh. And basically, the kind of ideas that evolve, that for addressing the challenge, we need to work on the integration of the two kind of capitals, the natural resource management capital as well as the social capital. So basically, when we talk about um, addressing climatic extreme events related disaster risk, basically we also have to integrate the disaster risk management and the climatic knowledge, the benefits into the government and the private schemes and programs of social welfare. So whether it is a education, whether it is a health, so I think whether it is the diversifying employment opportunities, the housing, so these schemes also we try to integrate. For example, the free housing. So housing design has been improved with our interventions, and that to see whether it is a flood prone area. So what kind of a plinth height and what kind of a new design, what kind of material changes has to be there. Then it is also important that we use the knowledge and the studies, including the case studies, including success and failure studies, from anywhere, but identify the suitable case studies to address the local challenge. So this was an intervention that we uh, screened a number of case studies across the world and identified the case studies suitable for addressing the climatic disaster risk in the state of Maharashtra. So this kind of intervention is also there, that we take the benefit from anywhere, but which are of direct use to the addressing local solutions. A major focus in the UN decade on ecosystem restoration is coming, that uh, we are trying to integrate the wetland restoration, more particularly the wetland restoration, in the city resilience framework and city resilience protocols. In fact, we developed a manual for mainstreaming the wetland-based ecosystem services into the district level disaster risk reduction process. So that is also important thing. So looking at sustainability as a holistic gamut, adaptation is significantly important, but the vulnerability, resilience, and then the core, but very, very critical, is the adaptability, so that we should not miss out the competencies and the preparedness to address the crisis situation, to cope up with the crisis situation. So that is also very important. This picture, my message is basically that when we talk about the crisis management, are the dealing with the known situations, but also the long-term the strategy, that is adaptability. So that has to be in sync and in integration, but that should also have a present interface, that should have an inevitable and imperative interface with thinking about the future generations. And future generation, when I say that future generation, not necessarily our own children, but basically the future generation of professionals. For example, if we are talking about the better city management or the smart cities, we should also think that what kind of risk and resilience levels and the scenarios we are going to transfer to our next generation of city managers. So basically, that is also very important, that what kind of disaster management system and climate resilience system we are going to pass on to the next generation of the professionals, experts, researchers, and managers. Then looking at the sustainability based interventions, jointly with the Global Green Growth Institution, we came up with a manual on green growth benefits for climate and disaster resilience, concern for urban and infrastructure systems. So basically, that this kind of a guide manuals have also been developed to help the planning process and to help in capacity building interventions. We also started looking at the newer dimensions. For example, when we are giving the great focus on the solar, increasing solar capacity, that had harnessing the sustainable energy system. Solar is one of the most sustainable we consider, and there's a international solar alliance. But to share with you that the very good and highest solar potential in our country, the reasons of highest solar potential are also the reasons which are highly disaster prone, more particularly cyclonic storms, earthquake, and the wind storms. And the solar PV cells, if there's any kind of a disaster events, then how do we look at this, the safety across the life cycle of these the PV cells? So looking at the newer policy dimensions and the post-disaster, the waste management, post-disaster dealing with the PV waste, these kind of things also emerge. Then when we talk about the local issues, so certainly cities and villages come to our focus. And we have some kind of a planning protocols for our cities. Now we have the planning protocol for our cluster of villages, that we call it panchayat. But as on now, we don't have any planning protocol for the areas in transition, which are in fact both are neither. So the peri-urban areas, we can't call them fully a city or fully a rural area, but they are both as well. And these are the areas mostly bear the brunt of the city development or the city beautification. These are the areas that get most of their waste. These inhabit the waste treatment plants. these inhabit the labor markets and many things. But now a lot of institutional development is also there. Tourism sites are also being developed. So our peri-urban systems are which are very dynamic areas, but very highly transforming in the present time. So basically, how do we look at the resilience of this specific local context? And again, coming to sustainability aspect. So basically, uh, during disaster response, that has been our experience, and some of the thought process from various international agencies like Red Cross, ICRC, IFRC, and WWF, a joint thought process also with UNEP. We were talking that when there is a disaster, prime focus is saving life, and the environmental concerns are often ignored. And we agree that life is precious and life should be the focus. But if we compromise with environmental concerns too much, that can lead to future disaster risks. So how do we integrate the eco-friendliness and sustainability issues in various aspects of climate, the disaster emergency response, relief, and long-term recovery? So basically, we came up with a manual on climate-proofing disaster relief and recovery. I think this is the first ever. I didn't find any such kind of initiative anywhere. So this kind of interventions is there, and now we are providing training to our key stakeholders that how do we take care of reducing environmental losses and damages during disaster response and recovery as well. Another, the green growth and resource efficiency for DRR, more particularly looking at the cities and the industrial areas, the tourism areas. And that is very important because the kind of devastations this year we have seen in the country because of the heavy rainfall and landslides. I think there's an urgent call that we start looking at the eco-sensitive areas. We start looking at the ecological dimensions as the very important critical need of the disaster risk reduction system. On the right center is the manual on nature-based solutions for reducing disaster risk. On the right is the manual for cities, disaster risk resilience. So we, through our capacity building interventions, through our policy planning interventions, we are trying to focus. This is about the global call that we had, that how the lifestyle for environment can contribute towards climate resilience. A compendium of case studies are in process, and that hope that will be useful in our capacity building interventions as well. So this all I already shared. Then at the center, there is a district handbook, and that has these kind of handbooks are prepared in local languages, state languages. This is in Oriya for the state of Orissa, and it is available in English and Hindi also. So now many other states are also translating it. So basically, we worked on localizing the global and the national knowledge jointly with the local actors, local institutions. Then looking at the different specific vulnerabilities for local level. For example, when we talk about peri-urban, are urban. So the children are differently vulnerable. Similarly, the women are differently vulnerable. So basically, when we say, so the vulnerability of children, then vulnerability of urban children, then vulnerability of urban poor children, and within that, vulnerability of the girl child. And then the disabled and other things are also coming. So a number of layers of vulnerability, for example, their exposure to water and sanitation challenges, their exposure to the damage to their education infrastructure, damage to their the protection infrastructure, many things come into the forefront when we talk about the specific vulnerability at local level. We also developed a compendium of case studies across Asia Pacific. This was the first ever such endeavor because a number of good examples were there in the countries of Asia Pacific, but no such compilation was there. So jointly with Springer Nature, we came up with publication on nature-based solutions for resilient ecosystems, uh, and the case studies from Asia Pacific, including India. So I shared that we have developed a Vision 2047 for addressing climatic and disaster concerns, and we are working towards a very effective interface with other countries, not looking only within the Asia Pacific, but also the South-South cooperation, also learning from each other. A lot of things to learn from the developed world and the European and other countries, but also there are also good enablers and resource systems in form of insights, case studies from India as well, and that we are in the process of exchange. We are open to enhance and promote this process and work in more stronger cooperation. Then looking at the lessons from COVID and looking at the lessons from the recent major disasters, there is also a significant initiative for institutional revamping. So our National Disaster Management Authority, our institute, the local level mechanisms, all are looking at what kind of changes, what kind of the capacity improvement, structural changes we need to bring, and also investing significantly in human capacity programs at local level. So that is also on our the agenda. There are a lot of things that basically we will have to do in bringing that localization. Talking about localization may appear easier, but doing is really very, very complex because, and more particularly for a country like India. India has vast diversity. We have 7,500 kilometers of the coastline, including islands. We have 13 states, which are the northeast Himalayas, Indian Himalayas, northeastern and the western Himalaya. We have the dry lands, the desert areas. We have large floodplains. We have the industrial pockets. So we have major cities also. In fact, when it comes to urban flooding, so the list is not complete without the cities from India in urban challenges, the population, urban floods, and these kind of issues as well. So while we talk about addressing the focus on sustainability, focus on nature-based solutions, protecting environment and ecosystems, we also want a development at fast pace, infrastructure at fast pace, because we are a largest population. So we will have to come up with a kind of a middle path, and that is the real way to wisdom, so that we have a good level of resilience through adaptation and sustainability. So thank you, and over to you, Dr. Pallavi, for opening for the questions.